and welcome to the virtual celebration of the LPCA's Winter Juried Show, Scenes from a Book, The Mind's Eye. I'm James Lemons, the LPCA's Executive Director. As we all navigate the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, one of the key lessons we have all learned is the importance of art and artists in these troubling times. And this show, which merges our love of the visual arts with our love of language, is a key example of how two different artistic disciplines can come together to create something new and extraordinary. Today, we celebrate not only the winners of our exhibit, but all the artists who have taken the time to share with us their unique perspectives and have helped us take a glimpse into their own mind's eye. Now, here is Anya to tell us a bit more about what this exhibit holds in store for everyone who witnesses it.
Hello, I'm Anya Villeneuve with the Lake Placid Center for the Arts. This winter's themed juried show is Scenes from a Book, The Mind's Eye. Have you ever read a book and have been able to instantly visualize the scene? Has the author's words allowed you to instantly visualize the setting of the story? This winter, the LPCA celebrates the power of words with a juried show focusing on the intersection of art and literature. Featured works may be inspired by literature, be based upon an author's description of a place, be an interpretation of a scene from a novel, or highlight an artist's response to a work of literature. For this juried show, we had 85 entries. Through a challenging deliberation process, our two jurors selected 59 entries to exhibit, which you can see in person following proper social distancing guidelines or online under the Gallery tab on the LPCA's website, lakeplacidarts.org. While our jurors chose 3 award-winning pieces, there were so many amazing works that they wanted to single out 3 pieces for honorable mentions. Those artists receiving honorable mentions are Marie Kogar with Asteroid 612, Planet of the Little Prince, Bosco McKinney with Illustrated Man, and Valerie Patterson with Entering the Fairy Tale. On behalf of our jurors, I would like to thank all artists who submitted. We hope everyone will take the opportunity to come explore the exhibit, either virtually or in person.
We want to send a special thank you to our jurors, Sarah Galvin of Lake Placid The Bookstore Plus, and Natalie Thiel, Executive Director of the Adirondack Center for Writing, for putting this exhibit together and selecting our winners. Sarah and Natalie had the challenging job of selecting pieces from an amazing pool of work. Thank you, Sarah and Natalie, for all of your efforts. And now, we are pleased to present you the award for 3rd place, which goes to Ruth Crotty's River Valley Sunset.
The work that I submitted to the show was reference to Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath. It was based on a photograph I took years ago, and I always had wanted to paint it. It was kind of in this someday pile. And when this competition came around, connecting a literary piece to a painting, I thought of this photograph. And even though it's not a photograph of Oklahoma landscape and Oklahoma sunset, the building in it, I had spotted years ago when I used to go to New York City on the train. And the building, the shape of the building always reminded me of a feed store that I used to go to with my mother when I was a child. And when I looked at the building, I often wondered what it was like to be back in the 1930s and to have taken that terrible trip across the country in search of a new life. And so I had already made the connection with the 30s and the agricultural way of life years ago when I used to look at this building. And I think initially, I think it was an emotional attraction to it, but it also wasn't. It also was very visually stimulating to me. So I decided I decided I wanted to paint this photograph. Normally, I'm a plein air painter. I paint on location. I paint outdoors. I do studio work. And so I thought, good, this is an opportunity for me to do it. piece. The connection with the book was the sunset phrase. It says a drop of sun lingered on the horizon and then dropped over and was gone. And the sky was brilliant over the spot where it had gone. A torn cloud like a bloody rag hung over the spot of its going. And the dust crept over the sky from the eastern horizon, and the darkness crept over the land from the east. So when I decided I wanted to do this painting, I thought of Steinbeck because he used a lot of color references symbolically in his book. And so I haven't read Grapes of Wrath since I was in junior high, maybe younger, but I did remember his very colorful language and his use of color in descriptions. So I thought, I'm going to go back and look through the book and see if maybe there is a connection there. And when I got to the 6th chapter and I saw this phrase, I said, I cannot believe this perfectly describes the scene in this photo. This is different because I'm in my studio. My process, usually there's something that stimulates me visually. There's something that I see. Usually it's something that's a temporary, for example, like the sunset. It's something temporary. It's something that's not going to last. I want to capture it. And I know that sounds like a photograph, but I can put my own, but by the way I use color, by the way I choose how to emphasize things, choose a focal point, I can, I put my input into it. And so, I start with something that, as I say, stimulates me. And then if I'm painting outdoors, I basically just block it in as quickly as possible, because outdoors you only have a 2-hour time frame before the sun moves and your composition is changed, because your shadows and your highlights all change, which changes the shapes in the painting. And since I've been doing plein air for 10 years, now that I'm painting back in my studio, I'm using some of that thinking that I didn't necessarily have when I did just studio paintings. And I work a lot with complementary colors. I like the excitement of the back and forth between complementary colors. My mother gave me my first box of paints, oil paints, when I was 10 years old, and I was hooked. So I really painted I painted my whole life. I got a BFA from Tyler School of Art in painting. Then when I started a family, I really didn't have the time to devote to it. So I did a lot of photography just to keep my eyes sharp for things that interested me. And I grew up outside of New York City. And when I got married, I moved to Saratoga County, and I've been here for the past, I have my 50th wedding anniversary coming up. So I've been here for 50 years. When I started painting again about 25 years ago, I started out with watercolor because I was painting in a domestic situation, and I did not want to introduce oils into the house. So I started with watercolor, which I had never used before. I used that for about 15 years. And then I decided I really am an oil painter. So I started painting in oil again. And that's when I started doing the plein air. I've been painting plein air for about 10 years, and I find myself drifting back to watercolor, which is what this painting is. It's watercolor with a little gouache, but I find myself drifting back towards watercolor and maybe working more in the studio. And with COVID, a lot of the events that I would have attended this past year, which would have been plein air, were canceled. So I've been doing a lot more studio painting this 2020. And I may continue what I'm doing now. We'll see where it goes. I'm at a transition point. It's a very personal piece to me. It did bring back, it brought back a lot of memories of my childhood going to the feed store with my mother. She had chickens she raised for pin money. There's a confluence of a lot of thoughts and ideas about this painting. It reintroduced me back to John Steinbeck, which I really enjoyed. It also, as I say, was very nostalgic for me because of the building in the scene brought back memories of my childhood. But also, I traveled back and forth to New York City on Amtrak quite a bit in the last 30 years because my family's down or was down there. And so that trip down the Hudson River is very inspirational and personal to me. And also the other thing that means something to me that's part of the painting is I've always, like everybody else, have loved sunsets. And I haven't done too many sunset paintings. I probably have 1,000 photos of sunsets, but the sunset, the trip down the Hudson, that building I've looked at for 30 years. I always look for it. It just, there's something about it that caught my attention. So it's just kind of a confluence of inspirations, really.
Hi, I'm Erin Walco, Director of Development at the Lake Placid Center for the Arts. We would like to send our sincere thanks and appreciation to our gallery at LPCA sponsor, Adirondack Premier Properties, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, and agent broker, Margie Philo. Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Adirondack Premier Properties is Lake Placid's featured realty office and industry leader in real estate and vacation rentals in our region. Attention to detail and old-fashioned values enables you to find your dream home or property. Located in the center of town on Main Street, you'll find the office is home to knowledgeable agents who showcase homes for sale in Lake Placid and around the Adirondacks. Thank you again to Berkshire Hathaway Home Services and Adirondack Premier Properties and Margie Philo for your continued support of the gallery at LPCA.
Thank you, Erin. And now for our second place winner with Lives Bound, here is Susan Beadle.
The piece that I did for a farewell to arms is what I would call Adirondack Impressionism. It's done with the idea that mountains, lakes, walkways, all avenues of the Adirondacks have a feeling. But that feeling isn't just the Adirondacks, it's any place you have mountains, lakes, walkways. And when I started working on the piece, I didn't really know how it was going to feel, but I just kept thinking about Northern Italy and, of course, the Farewell to Arms. I'm a big Hemingway fan, and yeah, so that's how it came about. I received the information about the show that you were hosting. I decided that I wanted to be a part of it. I had already decided that I wasn't going to drive as far as Lake Placid for a winter show just because of transportation. But I was so enthralled with the idea of combining a book and an image and a thought and a painting that I had to paint. So I think it simultaneously happened. I knew I wanted a mountain. I knew I wanted impressionistic views of a mountain, and I knew the mountains that I love. Actually, I have changed considerably, I would say, in the last year. I've started painting on board, which for me is interesting because I use very large knives to paint. And they look more like cake decorators, actually. My palette knives are 8 to 12 inches long. And it's layer upon layer of color, both vertically and horizontally, which is my base. So I use a red gesso base, and then I use layers of color, and then I start to build the image that I want to show. The line of horizon, the water. And since it's abstract enough, I don't really have to worry about, looking at an image or thinking that I'm there. I just keep working until it speaks to me. I'm a historian by trade. I taught for 35 years. I taught history, Asian African studies, which is a ninth grade curriculum in New York State. And then I also taught US history. So I have always been a student of art, and I've always been an artsy person. And when I stopped teaching, I needed to figure out how it was I was going to address the world again. Because when you're teaching, you think, how am I going to teach this? How am I going to get people interested? How am I going to inspire other people? And when I didn't have a classroom, art became that medium for me. So I would try to think of things and pursue things that were of interest to me and say, how can I get other people to react? It is a very crazy time to be a historian, but the good thing about being a historian is that it lends perspective. And you realize that everything that we go through, everything that's happening has already happened before. And you take faith that it will all work out. Painting like a fiend. And I have stacks of stuff. You know, it's how I make it through my days. I walk every day. I try to do 6 or 8 miles a day, and I paint. And that's pretty much it. In the first 6 months, I couldn't see my grandchildren or anything. And I'm pretty much hunkered down, and that's what I did. So it's got its good points and its bad points. I think one of the big things is that painting is more than just an individual act. It's a community. We have a very vibrant community here in Glens Falls. We have a plein air society here that has 140 members. We were able to meet last summer weekly because we could socially distance. We were outside. We didn't have to worry about, exposing each other. And that group of people really has been a tremendous inspiration to me. I mean, they're all ages, from really young people. The Hyde Collection does plein air events for 4-year-olds. And a lot of our members are in their upper 70s and 80s. So the idea that they're still out there doing it, is amazing. And I think this community, people don't realize, you think of artist painting as being a very solitary thing. And in many ways it is, but to have the support of people who are doing what you're doing and enjoying it and meeting and talking about it, it's wonderful.
We want to remind everyone that all work selected for the exhibit will be available to be seen online under the gallery tab of our website, which is www.lakeplacidarts.org. The online gallery is now open. We hope you take some time to experience all the work selected by our jurors. The gallery will also be open for socially distanced in-person viewing during normal gallery hours, which are Wednesday through Saturday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And now we come to our first place winner. Receiving a $1,000 cash prize and co-headlining an exhibit in next season's gallery schedule is Eleanor Sweeney with her work, That Very Night in Max's Room, A Forest Grew and Grew and Grew.
It's a photograph that I made of a tree that was damaged in the ice storm of '98. And you can see, here's the picture of it. You can see how it's kind of jogs off. That was damage to the ice. It's a little bit spooky and scary. And it just reminded me of one of my favorite children's books, or books of all time, Where the Wild Things Are. I'm sure most people have read that book. I've read it about 100 times or more, I'm sure. And I think I know most of it by heart. But it reminded me of the part where a forest grows in the little boy's room when he's sent to bed without any supper. And it looked a little bit scary, but not too scary, and mysterious. So I thought it would be perfect. The photograph is a reflection in Mylar. Here's my big piece of Mylar, and you can see that it's all kind of ripply and funny. So someone held up the piece of Mylar to reflect the tree. I photographed the Mylar, and so the tree looks all wiggly and funny. Then I made a photo of it and transferred it onto a box, which is how it appears in the show. And I touched it up quite a lot with paint and colored pencils to make it more sharp and, well, scary. Yes, I'm a big reader, especially right now. In fact, yes, I have piles of books now. But I always remember, I love a lot of children's books, and Maurice Sendak, who wrote this book. And so, yeah, and I really appreciated it also, beside the story, the illustrations. I mean, those are really beautiful, those little wild things and things. So yeah, I read a lot. I had the photograph, but I had never done anything with it. And so when this came up, I was thinking about these photographs that I had made with the Mylar. And I just looked through them and I thought that would be perfect. And I played with it quite a bit in the computer. And then I put it onto the wood box and played with it a lot more with the paint and pencils. So it was, I guess when I saw the theme of the show, I thought back to the image that I already had, but I had never done anything with it before. So I feel like this made me use that image. Well, I always liked art. My mother was a good painter, and I always took art. And finally, when my youngest child started kindergarten, I decided to learn about photography. So I went to North Country Community College and I took photography from Ken Wiley. And he really encouraged me, and I just took off from there. So a lot of the time I've just been self-taught, but I've gone to a few workshops, just about like transferring images onto things and different techniques, but most of it I just sort of investigate on my own. I like to keep moving. But on this one, I thought about it a lot. Sometimes I just sort of whip one off and do it, but this one just had a lot more to it because it was for the show, for the theme of the show, and I love the book so much that I just wanted to make it right. And it does seem, it feels like what it was like in Max's room that night when he was sent to bed without any supper.
Congratulations to Eleanor, Susan, Ruth, our honorable mention winners, and all artists selected for exhibition. And a big thank you to artists whose work was submitted but not included in this year's show. You made our jurors' jobs very challenging, and we hope you will continue to submit to future juried shows. Thank you for spending some time with us today. We hope you will visit us online or in person, and we look forward to when we can all gather together again to share hors d'oeuvres and toast all our artists. Until then, stay safe and wash your hands.